Hello, my name is Eric Townell, and you're watching In the Spotlight. My guest today is Richard Decker, Vice President for Artistic Administration at the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra. Welcome, Dick. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks, Eric. It's a pleasure
to see you. It's wonderful to have you here. I think that planning for an orchestral season is something that few people understand, even if they attend the orchestra concerts and enjoy them.
Well, I think probably two aspects of the planning which would be the most that the public might not understand quite as much would be the timetable for it, and then the different layers that go into the different planning of it. So I think we generally start almost 2 years in advance of the process to plan the season. And when people think of their lives 2 years down the road, they're not thinking too much about that. But for a lot of different reasons, we have to think that far ahead. One of the first elements that comes into place is just the schedule itself. So we have to find out availability for Eastman Theater, for example, and then once we've found out the scheduling that we have available, then we have to start to put all the principal players into that mix.
I see.
Starting with our conductors, and then that moves on to guest artists and other lots of different layers along the way. So as a result that it takes quite a bit of time to get all that in place. And then the season has to be completed in time for the marketing department to develop all of their materials. And then usually our next season is announced about 7 to 8 months in advance of when it actually starts. So you back all those months and weeks up, and you end up in about a 2-year cycle in terms of preparation for the next season.
I understand. So that means that while you're producing the season's concerts during the day with the rehearsals and the concerts, you're actually planning the next one or the next one down the road.
Yeah, one of the anecdotes that I have when my job is that when someone asks me about a month, I have to ask them what year they're talking about. So oftentimes I'm involved in 3 different seasons. I'm involved in the actual season I'm in.
Yes.
For example, in late spring, we'd be doing concerts that I'm involved in. At the same point in time, the following season, which should be all finished, is still, details are being worked out.
Right.
But underneath all of that, we're now looking at the following season along the way. So it's at any particular point in time, I'm at least have my head in either 2 or 3 different seasons, trying to figure out which one I'm supposed to be answering that question to. So.
And so I think people would also be surprised to learn how many services the Philharmonic actually performs in a season.
Well, normally the orchestra plays somewhere between 100 and 120 different concerts a year. Now, that's not different programs, but because we repeat our Philharmonics twice, we repeat our Pops twice, we do 6 Nutcrackers and things like that.
Oh, yes.
So, but we end up with about 50 different programs by the time the season is all said and done.
Each with its conductor and soloist.
Each with a conductor and a soloist and all the repertoire involved with it. So each one of those programs goes through a similar process of constructing it, figuring out about the music, and then putting all the details in place for it. So it's an ongoing process. It's a little bit like constructing an onion backwards, is that you keep adding layers on top of it as each part of it becomes clear.
I see.
So as an example, we do a concert in SUNY Brockport every year. And the decision to do that was made last spring. And so then the date was set, and then we picked a conductor for that particular concert. And I'm literally in the process of now finalizing the program with the conductor for that particular program after talking to the presenter about it. And now the next layers go with get the librarian involved to be sure that we get the music, and then hire the players for it, and then ultimately get to the rehearsals and the programs. And so each layer, you finally get to the final product a long way, but each one takes a little bit of time to get to that point. So.
I see. And so you're making a lot of decisions on the artistic shape of the season just by virtue of having to plan this far in advance.
Yeah, I would say my role specifically is a collaborator for the artistic product of the orchestra is that the music director obviously is heavily involved. Our new music director, this 15-16 season coming up is Ward's first season that he's sort of programmed. So I worked with Ward quite closely about that particular season. We're now working on the 16-17 season to plan that. But our principal pops conductor, Jeff Tyzik, and Michael Butterman, our outreach and education conductor, I work with all of them and all of the guest conductors to put the program in place.
That's great.
And there's some umbrellas that go over all of this. There are budget umbrellas that I have to keep within. There are musician contract rules about when rehearsals can be, how many rehearsals we can have in a week, when they can be. When we work with the Rochester Oratorio Society, there's scheduling issues that have to be worked out along the way. So it's complex, but if you take it in steps, it's a manageable process. You just have to realize it's sort of the ultimate multitasking kinds of thing, because I can bounce back and forth between 5 and 10 different concerts a day, sometimes about the different details with it, and I just have to be sure I keep everything straight along the way. So.
And I imagine that the prominent soloists that you have at the Philharmonic plan their years 2 years out also.
Well, yeah, and actually it is the case that some of them of more note actually are even much further out than that along the way. For example, this coming season, Yuja Wang is going to be with us. Very, very prominent pianist who plays with the major orchestras around the country. We're very pleased to have her joining us for this season. But we really caught her on the end of her scheduling process. When we were planning, the larger orchestras, because of the nature of their guest artists, the fact that they're very prominent soloists, is that their schedules get formulated even 3, 4, 5 years in advance.
That's remarkable.
And so when some of the smaller orchestras aren't quite that far in advance, is that we're finding out about what availability they might have left in their schedule on it along the way. So, for example, Jeff Tyzik, now that he's pops conductor of 6 different orchestras around the country, it's quite a complex puzzle to get all of the different dates set with Jeff in all of the different places around the country along the way. So I have to start with Jeff a little bit earlier sometimes than with some of the other conductors about the schedule on it. So.
Lots of demands on their time.
Yeah, and the dates are obviously critical, because then you can't engage a guest artist unless you've got a date to offer them along the way. You just don't call up a guest artist and say, we'd love you to come to the Rochester, but I don't know when. So, anyway.
And so do conductors come to you with their wish list of what they'd like to perform?
Well, for Ward's case as music director, that's his job to come to me with his wish list. And we actually started with that, and that was actually the phrase that I used when I started to first work with Ward. Was I said, this is your first year as music director with the RPO. What is your wish list about things you'd like to get done? And so we started with a list originally of guest artists, some guest conductors. I wanted him to define what I call the big repertoire, the big blockbuster pieces that he wanted to try to include on the season. But one of the things that, some factors that get involved that the audience might not be as aware of is things that go into accounting as to why we program and what we program are things like, what's the history of the piece? When was the last time it was played along the way? Because we don't want to repeat things too soon along the way. How big is the orchestra? Because extra musicians cost extra money, and it's got to fit within the budget along the way. So the season has to have a balance of large orchestra pieces and pieces that aren't quite as large to fit into it. And that balance is not only for the whole season, but also for the individual programs themselves along the way. And then your program has to be able to be rehearsed within the rehearsals that we've got available. You can't put too much hard music that needs 8 rehearsals in a sequence where you've only got 4 rehearsals for it, or even 2 rehearsals for it. So there are a lot of different factors that go into place as to why a program arrives at what it arrives at. The timing of the pieces. We generally try to have a program be within a certain range of pieces so that it neither gets too long or that it's too short. So you've got all of these parameters that you're working under. And so when Ward and I were putting together the season, it was, again, like putting layers on an onion. You start with the dates, and then a lot of the guest artists or guest conductors came into play, and then on top of that you started to then layer in, well, this is when I would really like to do my big Strauss Ein Heldenleben piece. Well, that's a 45-minute piece, which then leaves only a certain amount of time for the rest of the program. So the soloist cannot have a 40-minute concerto for that particular concert.
Right.
So all of these factors go into play, and it would be an interesting experience to look at like the first draft of a season and the last draft of a season, because oftentimes they're unrecognizable to the extent that pieces come and, well, we really can't afford to do all of these pieces this year, so this has got to come off, or some new pieces come in, or the guest conductors suggest some pieces that we hadn't thought about before along the way. So there's quite a bit of change from the beginning of the process to the end of the process.
And you know, if you're working on things that you have to hire players for, and it's 3 years out, you have to sort of guess what your budget is likely to be in that year. I mean, there can be changes in the economy and other factors that affect what you're able to spend on concerts down the road.
Yeah, I think as a general framework, that the budgets that I've been given to work with have been fairly consistent.
I see.
Is that we've not been in a position, and most orchestras aren't, to explode the budget substantially, unless there's a special reason, oftentimes for notable anniversaries, a 100th anniversary of an orchestra or something like that, is that there'll be some more investment into a series. Or if the music director has got some specific ideas and projects that he wants to do. Oftentimes there's some special money that is put in place to accommodate some of these special plans for the season. So each year's budget is about the same, but it sort of balances on either side depending on the activities in the season.
So if the conductor or the music director has a wish list, then you must have a way of choosing the works that go around the big works. I mean, do you listen to everything? What's your process for?
Well, hopefully I, as a resource for the music director, have enough background and knowledge that I can offer up suggestions if he doesn't have, or if he's looking for suggestions about pieces that might fit into it. And so before the conversations even start with the music director, I'll be doing my homework about studying the history. So I'll go through, and I have this sort of chart where all of the sort of major pieces that an orchestra, the canon of an orchestral literature, are all on this list, and it shows when we last played them. And I at this point, I know what the resources are in terms of number of musicians. I know what whether it's a music rental or not. That's another issue that the public doesn't, in a sense, understand, is that some of the music that we play, because of it's been written in the last 75 years, is under copyright with the publishers, and therefore for us to play it, we actually have to rent it. And older music, Beethoven and Mozart, Tchaikovsky, is all public domain, so we have that in our library. So we have to have a balance in the season of, in a sense, public domain library music and newer music in terms of expense that we can spend on a particular way. So it's a mix of a process as we go ahead.
Now, I understand that you know, there's a concert sequence. I mean, during the concert itself, that audience goes on a journey with you, and you know, some people have described that as a recipe or as a pleasing meal. How would you describe putting works together so it's pleasing to the audience?
Well, at least one of my philosophies is that I think that the concert has to be careful to not be too homogeneous, so to speak, homogeneous on it. Is that you want, even though your concert may have a certain theme to it, is that there has to be enough variety in it orally as people are listening to the concert. And one of the things that I do, in partial response to your question, is that once we actually put together a program and finalize it, or get to a final draft before we make it final, is that I listen to each concert from beginning to end at home with an intermission.
Fantastic.
So I listen to the piece, I put in 2 or 3 minutes between pieces for moving pianos on stage or whatever. At intermission, I'll take a break, I'll go up and get a bottle of water, and I'll wait 15-20 minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll listen to it. Because some of the things that happens is the intermission is oftentimes a chance for the oral palate to clear a little bit. So you keep that in mind as you're putting the pieces together along the way. So hopefully each program has a little bit of a journey. Some of them a little bit more specific than other concerts. Some of them, frankly, are just eclectic music experiences. I mean, sometimes I often get asked, well, why is this piece with this piece with this piece kind of thing? And sometimes there are very strong reasons why they're connected. And other times some of those reasons are more seasonal. for when we look at the season and we're trying to appeal to subscribers, is that there are quite a few subscribers who love to hear the classics, the Tchaikovsky and the Beethoven and the Mozarts.
Sure.
So one of the things that happens when we're planning the season, as each program begins to take shape and get finalized, there's this larger umbrella that I'm constantly bringing up with the music director. Okay, well, we've got a good deal of Russian music now in, but we don't have Beethoven yet, or we don't have, our ethnic mix is a little narrow. Do you want to explore some Spanish music or English music kind of thing? That was one of the conversations we had this year, is that I brought up that we hadn't done as much English music in the last couple of years as when Christopher Seaman was here. There was a little bit more emphasis on that.
True.
So that's one of the reasons that the Britain Serenade got programmed into this season along the way. And interestingly enough, I discovered that they are, at least according to the records, this is the first time the RPOs played the Britain Serenade on the Philharmonic series.
Oh, I see.
So this was an opportunity when Ward was putting the season together. We wanted a mix of really some new works that had never been heard before, more contemporary works that hadn't been heard before but maybe aren't within the last 15 or 20 years, and the tried and true repertoire. Just so that there are these balances that we try to build into the season overall, and then the result is that if you look at the overall season, is that there's quite a wide mix, literally 4 centuries of music over the course of that, and each program either is just plainly eclectic, or there's some more specific connections that we try to make within the program. So there's never one way to do a particular program along the way. Symphony orchestras oftentimes have done what's known as the overture concerto, big symphony kinds of thing. We try to mix that up as much as we can. I'm very much a fond of 4 concert pieces where you have 2 on the first half and 2 on the second half. And that often comes into play if you don't have a very long symphony kinds of thing. For example, one of our concerts this year will feature a stunning soprano to do Strauss' 4 last songs. And Ward really wanted that to be the concluding part of that particular program. But to do that is sort of too short a piece to just have on the second half. So that brought us to a conclusion that would be a good program to do a 4 concert, a 2 and 2 split on that particular program.
I see.
So as each program develops, there are different reasons why we end up wanting to put pieces together with each other. It's a timing standpoint, it might be an instrumentation standpoint, it might be a theme standpoint. So it's complex, but it's logical, I guess, is the best description I can give.
So over the course of a season, and certainly in 2 seasons, there's enough of an eclectic mix that anybody who's interested in going to the Philharmonic for the first time is likely to enjoy what they hear. I mean, find an entry point, in other words.
Yeah, I even just in the Philharmonic series itself, there's a huge variety of program material that goes. Literally, we're playing a couple of pieces that have just been written in the last few years.
I see.
Going back to a Mozart piano concerto. So there's a huge variety of music, and it's music that we think is very accessible. One of our goals is to ensure that whatever piece we play is something where the people are going to feel like, I'm glad I had a chance to hear that piece, whether it's a tried and true Brahms symphony or whether it's a particular new piece. The orchestral world back in the 60s and 70s went through a challenging period because a lot of the new music that was written was very difficult to listen to. It didn't make a lot of sense for people who weren't more studied musicians.
I see.
And I think that the orchestral world learned a hard lesson from that programming because there were some audience drop-offs at that point in time. So I think music directors are very understanding and really want the audience to embrace different styles of music, but it always needs to be good music, and that's always our goal.
And you know, I've found that some of the best experiences are had in the least expensive seats. For instance, when I go to the Philharmonic, I love to sit at the top, right at the center, where the sound and the visibility are fantastic. So it's an affordable experience too. And is that a goal of the organization, to keep it affordable for people?
Yeah, there's a really wide variety of ticket prices that extend all the way down to student tickets, and then our cheapest tickets I think start around $15 range for the orchestra, and then as you might expect, when you get up into the box seats, they're more expensive along the way. But as with most arts organizations, there are subscriptions that are available, which offer, even though it's for specific concerts, there's a lot of flexibility to change into different programs if you can't make it. You get a healthy discount on the overall single ticket prices to be a subscriber. And there are lots of subscription packages. I mean, it's not that you just have to subscribe to the Phils or the Pops or something. You can do a compose your own series, it's called. And just go into the brochure and you say, I'd like to go to these 6 different concerts, and you can get your subscription to it. It's a little bit more challenging for us to provide the same seat because of the different things you get into. But you will be in the same section, in a sense, for the Compose Your Own series. The orchestras have really tried to be as flexible as possible, from just single tickets to more complete subscription packages for it. And that's the case for all of our different series, too.
Right. And so now talk a little about the holiday programming, because I noticed that's gotten to be a wonderful, attractive feature of the season every year.
Well, December and early January, and really from Thanksgiving through for about 6 weeks, is a special time for most people. It's a family time, it's a holiday time, get a little bit of break time from work, hopefully, along the way. And over the years that the symphony, the Rochester Philharmonic, has developed some programs which have turned out to be well supported by the community, and events that they like coming to. So for us, we start with our Nutcracker at the end of November with the Rochester City Ballet, and we've 6 performances of that, pulled in literally thousands of people.
Oh my.
And lots of families and children. It's oftentimes one of the first experiences for them, is to see the Nutcracker. Very visual experience, a great storyline for the kids. And then once we get into December, one of the signature events has been our Holiday Pops that Jeff Tyzik put together.
I see.
And with the Festival High School Chorus with 200 local high school students, which is a real experience, positive experience for those particular students to come in and do that particular concert. But we've also included some Philharmonics concerts that have a bit more of a December-ish holiday classical spin to it. And we've added some specials. For example, this year we're going to be doing the Home Alone movie with live orchestra, which is a classic movie that we've all enjoyed many times. But it really is a unique experience to do it with live orchestra, with the film going on. After about 10 minutes, all of a sudden you don't realize that the orchestra is live, and you're hearing a huge symphony orchestra playing along the way. So, and we also get into some holiday runouts, and then we're going to cap off this year the holiday, in a sense, holiday season with another of the Cirque groups coming in early January.
And they're the ones that do acrobatics, actually.
Yeah, the acrobatics. So the Cirque Musica will be in early January. So there's quite a stretch from late November through early January where we see a lot of people come down to the RPO at the Eastman Theater to enjoy just a whole variety of different kinds of concerts.
Well, that's really, really terrific. It must take a special player to be able to play all of those styles of music with equal enthusiasm and equal skill.
Well, that's one of the privileges that I have of working with the musicians in the RPO. They're extraordinarily talented, they're extraordinarily flexible. I mean, I have no problems programming a concert where we literally go from playing the Imperial March from Star Wars to a classical piece of music to Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre to Pirates of the Caribbean kind of thing. I mean, it's the musicians have been doing it for so long, especially under the guidance and tutelage of Jeff Tyzik.
I see.
On the Pop series.
All right.
Is that, and that's really the new breed of musicians, is that they have this flexibility. And plus, we've just got musicians who have been with the orchestra for years, and they're just very comfortable with that. So.
I noticed that many of them have teaching and performing positions outside in the community. You know, they're a real community resource in themselves.
Yeah, they are. Eastman School of Music has a few of their full-time faculty. For example, Peter Currar, principal horn, Kenny Granter, principal clarinet. They are the top teachers at Eastman. And then there's another layer of RPO musicians who are either part-time teachers, or teach some courses, or at their Eastman Community School. And then they're involved with Hochstein, they're involved with their own private students. They play with a lot of, when they are free and available, they oftentimes play with other groups that hire musicians on a freelance basis. So it really, while the Philharmonic is a great resource to the community, a great quality of life, one of the tentacles, in a sense, of the RPO is the fact that with all of these musicians, 100 musicians or so, that are in the community, is that they're providing even more to the quality of life. They're a great resource for parents that want their students to study with talented teachers along the way. And so we're very pleased that the musicians are able to, as much as they want and are able to, can expand their activities to really impact the community.
So in an entry-level position, if you're interested in the Philharmonic but have never been, what would you suggest for someone trying it for the first time?
Well, this particular season coming up is one of the most eclectic that I have been involved with since I've been at the RPO. The RPO has been exploring to do more and more specials in addition to the regular series. So besides just the regular Philharmonic series, which has its just built-in variety that we sort of talked about, there's Jeff Tysick's Pop series, which mention everything from Cirque Musica to the Holiday Concert to headliners like Megan Hilty from Smash and Doc Severinsen, to R&B artist Michael Lynch, to some great dance shows. There's just a lot of popular music variety that's there. We've got a family series known as the Orchestra series that Michael Butterman conducts over at Hochstein, which is great for, we see a lot of grandparents with grandkids and parents with their young children, their activities before the concert. This year it's music of the Sneetches. The Seuss story. We're going to have a space story with NASA images on it. We're going to have a Carnival of the Animals with a lot of participation by SUNY Brockport students and faculty helping on that particular thing. We're going to have an animation concert. There's a Sunday series. If you don't want to get out at night, there's a Sunday afternoon series of great classical music that will this year feature RPO soloists mainly from the ranks along the way. But our specials this year, we're going to start with Final Fantasy, the video game, with the music from the video games. Spectacular music. Faithfully Yours, the music of Journey, is going to be in early November along the way. The Nutcracker is obviously part of what we do. The Home Alone movie that I mentioned. Another really special event is in January, the From the Top, that National Public Radio program, which normally just does Christopher O'Reilly on piano and the students. Very rarely and occasionally they will work with a symphony orchestra that's interested. And so we're going to be one of the few orchestras this season where the NPR will actually work with a symphony orchestra. So we're going to be recording live a concert that will be later broadcast on the NPR National Radio broadcast that will feature some local talent and some national talent. So it's a very exciting event. Jim Brickman, the popular pianist and singer, will be in late April. So there's just a huge amount of variety. I would challenge anyone that enjoys going out and enjoying any kinds of concert, that if they sit down with me for 5 minutes, that I will find something that they have to confess that they would love to go to on our season. There's just so much that's there to appeal to a lot of different tastes.
Well, thanks. You've been a wonderful guest, Dick, and I hope many people take up on the offer.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.